This is Getting Billy Strange with Sean Cole, or the Sim Tunnel, or whatever to be named later. This is our new pilot version of the Friday edition of the Pit Stop or Sim Tunnel, and I am here with none other than Billy Strange. How you doing, Billy?
Hello. Hi. I made it. I'm here.
You're here. So what are we doing here today, Billy?
This is our pilot. This is our test. This is our please don't take this too serious. We're going to try and see if we can get all of our settings correct so that it's not such a train wreck when we go live next week.
Exactly. It's a dress rehearsal, I think they call it in the official business. But we are here to do, who's interrupting the show? Columbus, Ohio in the house. We're not doing live calls yet, but that might come later. You never know. So we are here to cover the news, but better than that, we're really here to get into some of the news. I think that's the main point of the Friday edition of whatever you want to call it. But to give it a little more thought and a little more depth on important topics in sim racing. Yeah?
Yeah, I would agree. I thought you were going somewhere with this.
No, I just kind of went to the edge of the cliff there. Also, you may hear in the background, right now, we hear the laughing Brandon Waters. He is our producer extraordinaire who's going to be maintaining and making sure that you all do get involved in the show and have a voice. You have a thought, you have a concern, something that needs to be talked about during the show. It's going to be through the voice of Brandon Waters, at least in the beginning shows. We might expand upon that in the future, but should we get to the big topics of news today?
I should say so. Now, this is, again, the test, so we're going to cover some things we've already covered. But,
yeah, and maybe we should kind of give people a little bit of the format, too. I mean, we do kind of have a pattern or a format, and basically it's going to be covering a handful, and I'll have a few things to talk about. Billy will have a few things to talk about, news topics for the day. From there, we're going to really move into esport. Esport being such a growing part of what we do here in sim racing that it's going to really start needing some proper coverage of what's going on and who the stars are. And then it's going to be followed with, I think, what at least is my favorite part of this show, which is there's always something. Every week there's something to talk about in sim racing. You know, like, what do we need next in sim racing? What can we live without in sim racing? There's so many topics. Are they doing this right? Are they doing that wrong? And those are the kind of topics that we're going to finish each edition of this show with, and me and Billy getting really deep into those topics and probably ruffling a few feathers along the way as well. But that's always fun. So, all right. You want to start us off today, Billy?
Sure, I can do that. All right, so Assetto Corsa Competizione came out with a hotfix 0.4.1. I don't know why you'd use dots and points in the same sentence, but looks like they fixed an occasional driver model flashes in the Ferrari 488. Apparently he was going skinless or suitless. Fixed slightly offset cockpit and dashboard cams in the Ferrari. Added interior endurance lighting in the Ferrari. Fixed sprint race fuel estimation. Fixed cup category and car body kit when free event type is selected. They've just got a whole host of just small and minor other fixes here. Improved Hungaroring AI line, fixed wrong track starting condition, lap marks for replay HUD, removed gearbox compressor sound on Ferrari 48. You know, that's something that'll really get me irritated is when you have the wrong compressor sound. That pisses me off.
I have to confess, I don't even know what a compressor sound is.
You ever hear that little brrr every once in a while, like when you're driving the C7 DP and stuff like that?
Like when you downshift?
When you get ready to put it in gear and kind of do that.
Yeah.
I know the Porsche has it. There's several that have it. I'm pretty sure that's what that is.
Okay. So this is kind of fascinating that you get these hot fixes to what was just a brand new major update to the sim.
Yeah, well, at least they're fixing it quick. That's kind of the idea that they're going for, right? They're trying to stay on top of when they launch a new version, fix the issue that occurs.
And I guess that's one of the advantages of their rollout concept that they're doing.
I would agree.
All right, well, next up,
Factor 2, Sean.
Yeah, next up from the guys at R Factor, you know, we've talked about the RF Challengers pack, and we already talked about the fact that you're going to have that incredible BMW M6 GT3 car. You're also going to have the Porsche, as I called it a slut the other day, probably offended a bunch of people, the Porsche GT3R as well. And they had asked people, like, let us know what you think should be added to the pack. But meanwhile, you know they had an agenda already because this is well in the works. But that next car in the pack that they're announcing, so they're rolling out the announcement at least, is the Audi R8 LMS GT3 car. So filling in that RF Challengers pack at R Factor 2, and that can be an exciting thing coming in the not too distant future from those guys.
Yeah, I like the R8. That's a good addition. I always like the lines of this newer version. I like the BMW too. Porsche just it has to be there, I guess. But out of the three, I'd probably lean. Well, I don't know. I kind of like the BMW.
Now, do you get annoyed when people call things Porsche instead of Porsche?
I don't.
Does that like upset you when you hear it?
That my inside, I die a little. Angels cry, and Porsche owners die everywhere. So, for the sake of the Porsche owners, don't call it Porsche.
Unless you really want to antagonize them, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't care. But yes, it's Porsche.
Is Porsche a racial slur? Is that what that is?
Ooh. Now we're getting deep.
All right, what else we got?
All right, so Ritza Studios has updated Automobilista. It's such a terrible name. Version 1.5.13 is out, and it includes a bunch of little fixes, and also includes the Goiânia external ring and updated Imola. Let's see, is there anything of note? Fixed a UI bug that could reset tire sets, track progression, tire wear, fuel wear session. Fixed AI not going out of garage when tire sets UI option is set to default. Made window mode default to borderless. Oh, that's nice for those people. Yeah, looks like they've got an update on input devices. Fixed a bug where running multiplayer and spectator mode would cause single player to crash to TV trackside camera. I mean, that's incredibly important. Further tweaks to default settings. MCR. Oh, they updated the MCR, so that's a car in there. Added headlights and brake lights for nighttime racing. Ooh. All right. So, have you spent a whole lot of time in Automobilista, Sean?
You know, I've only spent enough time to know that it was pretty much like the best thing ever done with the R Factor engine. You know, kind of like across the board. I mean, it was like, wow, these guys really took R Factor 1 and just pushed it to the extreme levels. So I played it a little bit on the early on. I haven't played it since they've rolled out like just a ton of content really for it.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoy Automobilista. So
now, is that a racial slur?
It could be. It's a sim slur.
All right, so Fanatic's kind of been on a tear, whatever you want to call it. I mean that in the best of ways, with just product after product after product. Excuse me.
Oh, don't die on this.
I'm so excited. Oh,
about another rim.
But you know, at first it was going to be that new Formula rim, the Bumblebee, as I put it, that yellow and black paint scheme or color scheme that was an incredible wheel, but maybe not my favorite of colors, just in all honesty. When I look at this is their new Xbox One compatible steering wheel. You're looking at $350, so it's still up there. Same pricing, really. It's going to work with that podium-style magnetic paddle shifter mod that will come from them. So if you want to like add on to your already expensive, but look at that wheel. I mean, when I look at that wheel, it looks the part of some very expensive wheels that we see. And at $350, I don't know if it's quite as expensive as you'd think. I mean, it looks like more than a $350 wheel to me. It's a good-looking wheel.
It does.
Kind of their updated Formula rim.
Yeah, it is. And so they're doing pre-orders on that. We could finish this show, maybe not. Maybe this is the topic of the day, pre-orders, and your thoughts and opinions on that. But anyway, they are available for pre-order, and ship date, I believe, is in January, if I'm not mistaken. I should know that better, but
nice.
Anyway. And
Ooh.
Can you turn me up just a little bit on your end for the audience? Looks like
Yes.
I'm a little low.
The other thing they were talking about too is they're getting some echo off Billy.
Echo off Billy, so that means that I need to go to earbuds then, huh? I was hoping to avoid that. Alright, give me a moment. We have to fix this. Is that what Todd was saying? Because I agree. Yeah, that's the point, is to fix this now.
Yeah, me too, apparently, since now I've actually been talking a little bit.
So, are Brandon and Billy equal? Is the question. They both need to come up collectively, or do I need to alter them?
Can you guys hear us okay? They said I'm good. Spatial says yes.
That you guys are equal? Okay, so I can turn you guys up collectively, and then I now should have no... that should have fixed the echo as well. Alright, so I think we have things resolved. We'll have to make another adjustment. I don't want to adjust too much at once. Excuse me. Excuse me. I don't want to change too much at once, because then we'll get ahead of ourselves. So anyway, that takes us to the end of Fanatic topic, I do believe. Yep, I'm ready to go. You want me to jump in on it? Okay. 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 So, and just so you guys know out there, our whole plan and thinking is to start off with some of the sim racing news, move into the esport and what's going on there. And starting off with the iRacing camp, we've been talking all about what's going on at this Leipzig. Am I saying that wrong? Right? Leipzig? Leipzig? I think it's Leipzig, isn't it? At all? Can you guys... No, all of a sudden your guys' audio is gone. I know why. Okay, give me one more moment. That should have cured that.
You gonna get the cone bra out, Billy? When,
yes, I was pantomiming. I was letting everybody know that I was stuck in a box.
After the stream, yeah.
No, see,
you should YMCA.
I just want to thank you guys, the pit crew, the real pit crew. I want to thank you all, because it's so hard to troubleshoot this stuff without doing it. And if this was the real deal, it would be a little embarrassing. It'd be a lot embarrassing. All right, so let's start that one over again. So esport, what's going on in esport? iRacing.com, they have their whole Leipzig. Oh, that was where we were at. Leipzig. Leipzig?
Yep. Lipstick on a pig.
Lipstick?
I think it's Leipzig.
Leipzig, Germany. The Porsche factory is where that is. You'd think I'd know where the Porsche factory in Leipzig.
Nope, you said it. You said it. 5 Porsche owners just died in their sleep.
But going on right now is like one of these one-off esport. I mean, it's totally esport, but this is a one-off competition, not a whole series. But this is a big deal. This is 30,000 euro on the line. And when you look at the who's who, and I do say who's who, because when I look at the names of the guys who are going to be here at this, and, a lot of them, I mean, like Mitchell de Jong's from here, so I don't know what the deal was. Did they fly everybody there, or was it, hey, come get your claim?
I would imagine they have to take care of their own airfare. That's usually kind of how iRacing does their stuff.
Yeah, but it seems like there's enough money on the line for the amount of drivers involved that it's worthy of booking a plane ticket. Because at least you'll break even, it seems. I've seen competitions where, like, last place paid enough money to make it worthwhile for the trip, and then you get a trip to Leipzig, Germany on top of it. But Sebastian Job, Enzo Benito, Maximilian Benecke, I can never say his name right. Camille Franchek.
Is it without the E on the end?
Benek?
So would it be Benek?
Benek?
Might be.
I think it's Beneke.
Beneke. I think it's Beneke.
God bless you.
Sorry, Maximilian. You are one of the best sim racers on planet Earth. You'd think I'd know how to say your name. And I say it all the time, which is why I know you're one of the best. Camille Franjog, Frederick Rasmussen, Jamie Fluke, Mitchell de Jong. I'm going to miss as many names as I'm naming right now. I'm just looking at the ones that are noticeable to me. Patrick Holzman, Jeremy Boodaloop, Tommy Osgard, Sage Karam. Sage Karam, for those of you who don't know, this guy's a real deal IndyCar driver. He was in Indy not, 2-3 years ago? And he's in on the competition trying to get his claim at the money and the notoriety that goes with it. But this is a big deal. It's going on the 16th. And I'm hoping they're streaming it. They don't have any link here, but I know iRacing. I know this is going to be streamed.
That would be nice to, yeah.
And if you're in the Germany area, you can get tickets to it. You can go it. It's an actual Porsche Sim Racing Summit there at the Porsche factory. Awesome, awesome.
You know, before we leave iRacing, I just thought of something. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but they have the whole World Championship stuff. So we have the Peak Antifreeze, we have the World Championship with the Formula One car, and then we have the World of Outlaws stuff. And I believe if you look at the World of Outlaws, how they're getting people into the World Championship race, they have this first season, so season 1 of 2019, the top 20 in points go into their, basically their esports championship race for that. My question is, don't they have heat racing and consolation races for a reason? Isn't that the point of this whole thing?
So by treating it the same way as they treat their Formula One or NASCAR, because even NASCAR kind of left the show up and see who makes it in, other than like Daytona, that doesn't happen anymore. They're kind of, like you said, they're completely going away from what makes dirt track or outlaw racing what it is. Absolutely.
I just kind of thought of that. I was like, why aren't there, take whatever track has the smallest amount of cars. So I think that is on the circuit that would be Lanier. I think only holds 43.
Right.
So why aren't they taking a 43 car format and having the top 43 or top 60, and then when they get to that track, only the top 43 get into that race in points or something? But how come they're only taking 20?
I agree.
The races are short as hell to begin with. It's not like watching a Peak Antifreeze one.
And think of the spectacle, entertainment-wise, that it would make. You could start much earlier on Friday night, do it at night because, hey, we are talking dirt track. Friday night, start early with your early qualifiers and start thinning the field. And, if you're one of the A-listers, you better be able to defend that all night long or you're going to miss out on points that weekend.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't that add more drama if going into the championship race, all of a sudden the point leader or the two top point guys that are fighting it out, they don't transfer through their heat race. Now they've got to race their way into the main. Otherwise, third place in points is going to get, all the points, and he already made it into the show. I don't know. I just thought about it. I'm like, wait, why are they doing it this way? Why is it only 20 guys?
Yeah, no, they're
drivers.
They're definitely not doing that right. Well, they're not doing it in the tradition of the series that they're emulating. That's for sure. Right. Yeah, great point. Great point.
Just a side tangent there. I just thought.
And that's what this is all about.
Well, I'm good for those. Let's see. So, all right, we're out of that. We're gonna move on to Race Room. Race Room has an announcement. They are proud to present and I don't know how to pronounce this. It's Avia, I don't know, e-racing competitions and become a virtual. God, is that Avia or Avia? It's tripping me out because I don't know how to say that. It's virtual Avia racing driver qualify for the on-site final at the Nürburgring and compete for prizes with a total value of over €6,000.
More money. More money.
Sounds pretty good. I mean, I probably don't. Us in North America, like most of their competitions, probably don't qualify to go do this. But
no, when I look at
hopefully somebody tries it.
When I look at the actual Race Room competition page, it's all in German. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be able to. I think that's German. I don't even know. In Europe, I think we're to the point where you could make a living bouncing from tournament to tournament if you were that caliber a driver.
Sure.
30 grand on the line here, 6 grand on the line there, and it's like the frequency is becoming monthly for sure, and even getting, you know, to the point where it's like twice a month even. In Europe, we're a little behind. We're a little behind here.
Yeah, well, I think we're a little behind in most of those areas, unfortunately.
In racing.
Motorsport
in general is unfortunately not as popular here as it is over there.
Absolutely. So now maybe this will change things, though, because when you're talking about 704 games, NASCAR Heat, and what they have going on there, you're talking about oval racing. You know, oval is America. You know, when it comes to racing, we might be behind when it comes to racing overall, but when it comes to oval, there's no place on earth like America. And when you think about NASCAR Heat being, you know, the I don't know if they'll be the lockup or the only NASCAR for the future, because I believe the peak antifreeze continues on at iRacing, but I think this is going to be the big league. And anyway, they're making the announcement that the competition is actually underway. So we already had last year's competition that they just kind of threw together. I mean, that whole esport they threw together last season happened like that, from announcement to finale. This seems to be a little bit more formal, but they're already starting it. So, I mean, the announcement of its existence was less than a month ago, and now they're saying NASCAR Heat Pro League is on. Don't forget to race daily and share your videos on social media with hashtag eNASCAR Heat to get noticed. I look at that last line, Billy. eNASCAR Heat to get noticed. You know, in sport, in real sport, okay, the one thing that changes motorsport from real sport to me, and they do overlap, but in real sport, the best baseball player gets drafted onto the team. That's the way it works. Yes, how many people love you, your fanship might affect certain things in your contract later, but for the most part, it's 100% talent. Racing is 100% talent as a requirement to be there, but without the marketing flavor, that unfortunately is going to be one of those filters that can affect somebody's career in motorsport. In esport, we're a bunch of geeks playing at our homes. That's where we came from, and our persona has not been an issue. Do you think that esport version of racing is going to get hit by what real life? I mean, is marketability of the personality going to become... I mean, in this line here, you know, share your videos on social media with the hashtag eNASCAR Heat to get noticed. And it just made me think, to get noticed, well, isn't that what all those NASCAR guys are actually doing, vying to be noticed and be the most popular driver or sponsorable?
Yes, it's already happened. I think Rudy won because he had several qualities for that McLaren deal that he was looking for.
Yes.
So I think you're already there. I think you're going to have... I think you're still going to have guys that have undeniable talent, like Bono and stuff, and guys like that. But when you look at like Ollie Pakala, he drives really, really well. He's incredibly fast, but he has a personality to him. I mean, when you start talking about, you know, major esports competitions, like, I don't think of Bono first. I think of Ollie first.
Sure.
Because he has a great personality. Same thing with Rudy. He's very easy to talk to. He's very presentable. So you're already going to have that. Yeah. You're still going to have the guys that will drive, and they will force themselves upon anybody watching because they will be at the front. But, you know, in a year, if they're not in the limelight anymore, you're not going to have the same effect on the public. And these sponsors, people putting in the money, they know this.
Sure.
It's no different than racing now, right? So you're already to that point.
You could almost say that Ollie Pakala is the Dale Earnhardt Jr. of sim racing right now. He is not likely to win the championship, but he's going to get the. But he's going to sell the most merchandise, and he's going to win the favorite driver award. And if it was Formula E, he'd get the fan boost too.
There you go. All right, I have a correction.
Yes.
Tyson said the Woo Pro Series, they are keeping last year's pro drivers that they didn't kick for bad driving. So the article that I read didn't really explain that. I just saw that they were getting kicked. They only kicked, looks like 20 or 30 of them. So they will have the correct format.
Oh,
they will add 20 more drivers after this season. So they're going to have the 20 that they decided to keep, and then they're going to have another 20. So that is correction. It doesn't read that way in the article that they post. If you read that, it says, you know, just be one of the 20 drivers to get in. I'm like, 20 drivers, that's it? But no, they kept 20 from last year. So thank you, Tyson.
Awesome. Thank you. Tyson, you are the real star of today's show. All right, and I think that takes us to our last story, Billy. I think you're on this one.
Yeah, so again, I know we already covered this in the pit stop, but we're going to just pretend like we didn't. Motorsport Network acquires Virtually Entertained, and Sean had some interesting insight. So I think the broader question is, these guys have been acquired by Motorsport, and I don't know how familiar people are with motorsport.com or the Motorsport Network, but they kind of have their hand in everything. They probably have a broader reach than Virtually Entertained, but I think, Sean, you said it earlier, that was the eNASCAR Heat Pro League.
Yeah, they're actually behind that and also the Le Mans.
Go ahead.
The big Le Mans eSports series.
Yeah, so they do have some experience in putting stuff together, and I think what they're trying to do is broaden their reach by partnering or getting acquired by Motorsport. Well, so that implication is interesting, just because how many other sites are going to start doing this, or how many other companies are going to start doing this, realizing again that the motorsport side of esports is probably where the growth is right now, since it kind of seems like other esports have stagnated. You don't see a lot of new, not saying there isn't, but I'm just saying at the rate that there once was in esports on a bunch of the other stuff like Dota and things like games like that, really.
Absolutely. And again, I look at like Formula One almost stepped in to almost acquire that series. Like, I don't know what the real licensing is, but it's like,
right.
You know, you are seeing the bigs coming in and buying up things that exist already because it's easier than building it yourself in some cases. You know, with it, you get their talent pool, you get their technology, you get their infrastructure. So it makes a lot of sense when you look at like a motorsport, which had always been like traditional racing. It's only recently that they even added esport to their lineup.
Yeah, I would agree. So, I mean, how large do you think this can go? How big of a company do you think can start acquiring other smaller companies?
I think at this point we've opened the bottle and it's endless, because I think that we're already at the point. I was just saying the other day how I feel like sim racing has always been this little micro part of gaming, you know, this little teeny part of gaming, and that it's funny enough that it's esport that is going to give us a bigger market share, because I think what's going to happen very quickly on the esport level is they're going to see how true and honest the competition in motorsport racing is, comparing it to shooter games, fighter games, all those things that are, I mean, ultimately built on some form of fantasy to a level, because they're not sim. And I think with the word sim, even on the lower level, even when we're talking NASCAR heat, the what it takes to race and the competition structure is so true and honest and sincere, that I think that we're going to explode on the esports scene, and that all of a sudden company names like Coca-Cola, you know, are not absurd. Like that we are going to go from what we've known as this little teeny hobby to so mainstream that I'm not sure we're ready to deal with it, unfortunately.
Right. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. And we talked about this before when we did my podcast, is the worry is that things get left behind, things don't get properly presented. And I'm just not going to get totally into this, but I watched that last McLaren Shadow thing, and it was awful. The level of driving was terrible. The presentation was not very good, in my opinion. And they're using things that just, I mean, the one challenge was using an iPad for Real Racing 3. Right. That's like, if it's going to be an advertisement, please tell me it's an advertisement. Otherwise, I have a hard time taking this. I can't sit there and show a racing friend that stream. if I want to tell them, look at how far we've gone. Like if I go and take something like that and show the guys at the track, whether it be sprint car races, road races, whatever, and I show them that, they're going to laugh. They're going to laugh. They're not going to take it seriously. And you need something that presents itself in a much more serious manner for it to gain more traction. So the worst thing we can do is do something like that and it stalls out. You show them something like F1 2018 that presents really nice.
NASCAR heat.
And maybe
as much as I want to trash it, but how good would it look when I'm going to Coca-Cola and saying, look, you need to give $10 million to this. Look at what we're putting on. You know, it's going to correct some of that. You know, it looks beautiful.
You know, as much as, you know, we probably die a little on the inside, there is something because they have a broader reach to the consoles and stuff like that. If we want...
Killed our audio.
Oh.
Sorry, everybody. Fix them. It's because I switched back. No, I'm fixing it. I'm fixing it right now. Okay. That's me. That should be fine. All right.
Walk like an Egyptian.
I just have to balance the audio again. I'm a little quiet. Test. All right. I think we're back.
Hello.
Sounds good.
Everything should be
fixed. The esport thing I think would be a great topic for next week, maybe, you know, as far as that line. But I think the real takeaway from that story is what does it potentially mean for the future? You know, you've got these mergers starting to happen. What if a big company like one of the major networks, CBS or Fox or, you know, Turner Networks or whatever, stepped in and really went, you know what, we're going to push this thing, and came in with that level of money?
Well, here's one of the things we want to have this. We can almost make this the final portion of the show and just keep going with this right now, because this is exactly what we're talking about, is finishing each show with an in-depth conversation.
An extended discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're kind of already into this one, and maybe we should just kind of go with it. When I think of some of my favorite sports in the past and what happens, I hate to say, and maybe this is an American thing too, but when the TV rights come in, it becomes so much money involved that they really do call the shots, because they come in with like, here's our offer, and everybody's like, what? And then they get the contract, and despite having things that make you not want to do it, you're looking at the money and you're like, yeah, but whatever. Well, the reason I say this is because then all of a sudden my favorite motorsport series has been, like, you know, put on ESPN 8, you know, because the contract was with Disney, and Disney will do whatever they want to do with it. But then when the ratings aren't what they want, it ends up on ESPN 8. That's not even on my cable channel, and it's now gone. Right. And that's, you know, on the extreme levels, it's like, wow, we literally will get there. I was going to say we could. We will get there someday. It will get bought by a huge network, and if it entertains and gets the ratings, it'll be prime time. And if it doesn't, they'll put it on the cutting room floor. It'll never be seen. They'll own it. Sure, they bought it. Can't get out of that part, but that doesn't mean they have to air it.
Well, yeah, and it's even already happened, right? You have ESPN airing some of the esports stuff, not necessarily the racing stuff. And by the way, ESPN is pretty much divorcing themselves of all motorsport. But they do, was it League of Legends or was it Dota? Might have been both, one of the two. But you are getting hints of that already. Now, when it comes to the sim racing part of it, it might take a little longer to take a hold. If it does hit like a flash in the pan point, that's the problem, is that it doesn't grow organically. It gets thrust in the spotlight when it's not ready. I feel like it's not ready yet. Yes, the Ocho. I mean, it gets thrust in the spotlight before it's ready. I don't feel like it's ready yet. It still has growing pains we need to grow. And, you know, in the chat where John and those guys are talking about is, yes, unfortunately or fortunately, maybe, I don't know. Is it a gateway? We've talked about GT Sport and Forza being gateways, right? Into the harder core sims. So is it a bad thing? On one side, it doesn't showcase the sims we would like, but does the general public know that? Does somebody know that tuning in? I don't know that they do. But the repercussion is they take that as a serious sim. Not to say it's not a serious, but they take that as the end-all be-all instead of exploring all these other titles that have many different things to offer than what they're being shown, I guess is the way to put it.
Hey, Sean, quick interjection. I guess your image is reversed.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on that as we talk.
Well, I think this discussion would be good for another day. The depth of how far you can go into this is pretty vast. You know, I don't know, we'd had a couple other things that we wanted to bring up. And I actually had a couple questions that some of the guys had. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and ask you right now, Sean, if you're okay. So Todd wants to know why you don't do much rally stage racing like you used to back in the day.
That is a really good question. The main reason is nothing other than time. Right now I'm having more of a time issue than ever before. Doing the show solo, trying to do more than I probably can even do. Makes it really hard for me to do what I want. And that's really it. I mean, if I didn't have to do anything else, I would probably just sit around and jump from thing to thing, because one of my favorite pro driver, nobody will realize this, my favorite pro driver in life is Boris Said. And 90% of you might not even know who I'm talking about. But
oh, I know Boris.
Love that guy.
It's because, well, his personality is awesome, but it's because the guy seems to have, I mean, I wonder how many contracts he's torn up and thrown away in order to seem to race whatever he wants to race. And the guy just seems to like to race just about anything made. And I just love that, because it's like, man, I don't want to even consider myself a road guy, because it's like, I love oval racing. I've done as many miles of oval racing as I have anything else. I love rally. I love, like, trophy trucks. You know, the thought of that coming to iRacing is just like making my head explode. It's like, wow, I love off-road. So I just don't get to do enough. But there's not even a discipline. If you really put me down, I don't have a favorite kind of racing, like as a viewer or as a driver. I love racing cars. They're all unique. They all have their own fun. They all have their own discipline and specialties that, like, some I'm better than others, but that's part of the fun too. Anyway, long-winded to answer. That's why.
Oh, that's great. Then Dan has a question for Billy, but I think it kind of broaches into one of the topics that I think we should bring up, and that's Assetto Corsa Competicione's rollout plan. And is it entertaining? Is it just marketing hype, or what's the justification for it? And then when we get to the end of that, I'll ask this question for you, Billy. So what do you guys think?
I find it interesting because before they were independent and I felt a little more at ease with them doing early access. They have 505 backing them now. So I don't understand why they did this. Purely for the fact that you're missing out on sales dollars. But were they afraid people were not going to buy it? I don't think it's a community thing. I think that it was a way to ensure people would buy it because they didn't know how the product would turn out. That's how I feel. And that's why I have yet to buy it, because I've not seen anything that makes me go, I have to have it. I have to admit, the other day with the Ferrari coming out, I was like, maybe I should get it. And I know price is a big factor for a lot of people, but I think that's why this is wrong, because they preyed on people's willingness to just throw $20 at it and then just take off. And we don't know what that finished product's going to be.
Yeah. No, I think that's very relevant. And in a nutshell, they're doing a rollout version of why I fear a lot of pre-order items. I'm shocked at the way they've gotten the world to accept pre-order as a norm. Like, oh, you just automatically pre-order. And it's like, well, yeah, but sometimes products aren't what they said they were going to be. Sometimes products don't arrive when they say they're going to arrive. And you're paying no matter what. So it's fascinating to me that people have been very... Because what used to be getting a tremendous discount... Now, in the case of the rollout for Assetto, you could argue that you are getting a tremendous discount. But for other products, just on the whole pre-order, it's you're not getting a big discount in a lot of cases, or a discount at all. You're not even getting a free Warhorse for you Red Dead fans. You know, there was always a perk to the pre-order. Now people just are so used to pre-order, you don't even need the perks in some cases. You just are fearful that the initial run will be so small that you won't get yours, I guess.
Well, and the reason for pre-ordering used to be because of the physical limitation, right? They used to make so many copies based off of how many orders the companies, you know, the retailers put in. And if you didn't, I remember pre-ordering stuff back in the day, because if you didn't, you wouldn't get a copy. This is before digital downloading. But once digital downloading took over, what is the purpose? Why are you pre-ordering anything? Well, then it became horse armor and all this, you know, reference to Skyrim, but it became all these other ancillary things. And I think the line for me always was, if I enjoyed your previous game and it's going to be a version of that, you know, an iteration, then I'll take a chance. If you're going to give me something in advance, then I'll take a chance and I'll pre-order. Or if I can download, you know, like pre-download, I think that's a good, you know, if you know you're going to get it regardless, then getting to pre-download it so that when it actually goes live, you can start playing it. If you're that type of person, I think that's okay. But now you can see that pre-ordering isn't working. So now what are they doing? Look at all the early access to the titles now, like a lot of the EA stuff. I believe it's EA. I think Forza did it. I think Dirt Rally 2.0 is doing it. So now, to be relevant and in the conversation, because that's what they're preying upon. They want you to be part of that conversation. They want you to feel like you're missing out. Well, if you pre-order, we'll give it to you 6 days early now.
Sure. Yep.
And it's on their end, as a business person, it's a way to ensure sales, which brings us back full circle to the $20 price tag of ACC. It was a way to ensure sales. They're willing to take the hit to ensure that they're getting those sales.
Now, what if 3/4 of the people who were actually going to buy the title ended up buying it at that price? Would they end up big losers on the day?
I think that's a quantity over quality. Well, quality wouldn't be the right phrase, but definitely a quantity purchase, right? When you're in business, I used to do this at Gray Bar, where, you know, you're selling these bundles of pipe to electricians and all that, and the rat race became, you know, between copper and your EMT, like, what's the lowest price you could possibly get? But what happened was, we as a company stopped doing the price wars. We found a level, and that was it. And sometimes because prices fluctuate with that stuff, so sometimes prices would be good, sometimes they wouldn't. So it averaged out. But what happened was, those other people are selling it so cheap that they couldn't survive.
Right.
So are they putting themselves in a hole? Like you said, if 80% of their customer base buys at $20, is that putting them out? Is 505 just saying, well, you know, we're just going to pick up the tab? Like, how does that work?
Well, and then they might have spent that money, being that it comes in pre-release even, let's say, to finance development to an extent. And then when the days that it should be turning a profit, it's coming in light, you know, post-release, so to speak.
Because now things go on sale soon as well, just as you were pointing out, but things go on sale really quick now. I mean, if you look at Fallout 76 and you look at the new Battlefield game, they sold terribly. Right. So instantly they're put on sale. Don't think other titles from with publishers behind them won't do the same thing. Right. So if they feel that ACC on actual launch day isn't selling as much as it should, is it going to go back the other direction in a week? Because that's what happened to Fallout 76. That's close to what happened to Battlefield 5. 5, I think. So they're going the opposite direction. Real quick. Thank you.
All of a sudden it's on Humble.
So, but then you look at Red Dead Redemption 2. It hasn't gone on sale yet.
No. Did the first one ever go on sale? I mean, like,
oh, God, right? And it's just like Nintendo. Nintendo does not discount their games.
Right.
It just doesn't happen because they know the quality of the game that they're pursuing. So it always gives me a weird feeling when they have a backing of a publisher, not to beat this dead horse, but the backing of a publisher to start something in early access. Again, you as a consumer are getting a deal, so it's good on your end, but you just don't know if that's going to turn out to be the product that you want. So it's a gamble. How much do you want to gamble? How much is it worth to you? I can't tell somebody that it's not worth it to them to spend that $20. I can only say what it's worth to me. And to me, it just wasn't worth it at the time. I'm still kind of on the fence. I don't know.
Well, it's so part of the industry. It's like we have to deal with it. I mean, I think like Steam, and half the games on Steam are early access. And I don't want to not play them. I mean, like, I look at, like, but then again, it's, in some cases, it might be a fishing expedition partially for a reduced price, like $20 for a Seto or whatever I paid for Wreckfest before it was full. But it also ends up being a fishing expedition for investment. You look at a Wreckfest, they're bought by THQ. Now they have the financing now, but they might have also lost all the power of developing their own game and doing that as well. So I don't, careful what you wish for there. But
well, the Kickstarter thing did that, right? That a lot of companies started using, instead of using Kickstarter to fund, then they started using Kickstarter to gauge interest. Mm-hmm. Was it who did that? Was it the Castlevania-esque game that did that? I don't know. There was a trend for Kickstarters that it wasn't to fund the game, because if you looked at the dollar amount that they were looking for, that wasn't going to fund the game. They were trying to gauge interest, and then they could take that to a publisher, and people got really pissed off about it, by the way. Right. But they were using that to gauge interest to go to a publisher saying, see, there are people that actually want this.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Well, I think you broached the question that Dan had, Billy, and that was, should he buy it or not? And I think that you kind of put it in great answer when you said basically it's relative, right? So I bought it day one. You said you weren't going to buy it until it was full release and you knew what it was going to be, but it really depends on what you want out of the experience.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that your decision is wrong. I mean, again, it's all about your perception and how you feel about the money that you're spending. I can't tell somebody that they're, in my eyes, I don't want somebody telling me how to spend my money, so I'm not going to tell somebody how to spend their money. If you go out and spend $30,000, I'll give this example. Racing sprint cars, when I bought a new car and a rebuilt engine, I take that back. When I bought my new engine and a new car, just those two pieces, not spares and anything else, that was roughly in the $75,000 neighborhood, right? When I bought my first car with an engine and it was used, it was roughly, I think we paid $28,000 for it.
With a ton of spares.
Right. My point being is, when I started doing the kart stuff at the big tracks, there were guys spending $30, $40 to $50,000 on a supercart.
Yep.
And I look at that and go, where? Why? But that's what they want to do. I'm not going to, and it's cool. I mean, they look neat. It's not something I'm going to do. Just like they could turn around and look at me and go, you're an idiot for spending that on a dirt car, which I've been told. It's all, you know, perception. And so somebody's spending $20 or maybe now the $34 on ACC. If it's worth it to you, then cool. Like I hope that you're getting the dollar out of it that you want.
I look at as a sim racer, again, I'm not looking at the titles that we buy like I look at regular gaming titles. I look at them from a hobbyist perspective more than just a general gamer perspective. And I'm like, man, the software is so dirt cheap compared to what we're spending on hardware now that it's like, if I even think of a title, like when I talk about games I haven't got, like the car, it's not even like I'm actually holding out even. It's just I haven't gotten around to getting, and I don't even have the time for it anyway. But it's like I'd buy them all because they're so dirt cheap compared to other hobbies and things. It's like if you're into golf, one round of golf at a decent course is going to cost you more than any piece of software we buy other than iRacing.
Right.
And it's like, well, you know, when somebody asks me about a title, should I get? It's like, man, if the name and the graphics that you've seen were enough to even have you pose the question, then you probably should. Because what is it really? I mean, unless you're poor. I mean, if you're like living to paycheck, which, you know, all of us have been there, obviously you have to think about every purchase you make in life. But if you're like in the market, you know, it's like if it's even entertaining in thought, it's probably worth the money unless, you know, you didn't read the box to find out if it was like a real sim and you were looking for hardcore or not, you know. But yeah, it's like on software, it's like, especially like Assetto, you can't go wrong on either end of the spectrum. It's like you buy it early, you'll get enough entertainment out of your $20. I guarantee you that. And if you wait till the end, well, then you can wait till valid, good reviews and opinions come out before you decide if it's for you or not. You know?
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons to it either way. You know what I mean? So you can get up front, try and help shape it into something that you want it to be or what it should be. Or you just wait till the end and go, okay, this is what I've got. It either works for me or it doesn't. I'm going to pay more for that experience. So
yeah.
That's fantastic input on both sides.
Any other questions from the audience?
Well, I actually want to.
Oh.
I like what Amir said. KA. I think there's a difference though between Red Dead Redemption was a very anticipated game. So I'm going to break this down. It was a very anticipated game. I would argue that so was Assetto Corsa Competizione. Since the first one was great. Again, I think that's a parallel to Assetto Corsa. Battlefield 5 and Fallout 76 were known to be horrible and not what fans wanted from the get-go. I will sort of agree. Battlefield 5 was only a turnoff because they injected certain things and then the head said, don't buy our game if you don't like it.
EA.
And then Fallout 76, I, on my end, saw a lot of, what do we want to call it? Hopeful skepticism. I think people wanted to play it until those guys went to the launch event and they literally said, dude, there's like nothing here.
Sure.
And I think that, but see, in that parallel, there's no early access, right? They're only getting it from the start of the game. So what we have to consider is the preview events are basically what we're getting of ACC. Now, ACC is building upon itself.
Were you able to pre-order Battlefield 5?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Sure.
So you could have given them money in anticipation of what the franchise has always brought, and then been horribly let down upon release.
So that's in one aspect, he's right. In the other aspect, I would say there's a lot of parallels that you can draw to Competizione.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't think has been considered enough is you've got these major corporations, EA in Battlefield respects, and you have Bethesda in Fallout respects. You know, and these are major gaming corporations. When you've got, you know, Kunos is a relatively small developer, and I know they do have the backing now of that bigger studio, but does it carry any merit with this model of using the community, the sim racing community, to develop, to kind of shoulder those development costs and the lost revenue that they're going to have by pre-selling it? How much does that really offset what their normal development and R&D and beta costs would be, as far as finding the bugs, double checking the vast multitude of software configurations that we all have, and really helping polish that final project, and them not having to shoulder the cost of that?
Well, 505 isn't a small publisher. They're not AAA huge status, but 505 isn't small.
Right.
And they've been around for a while. So I think it goes back to, they did increase their team size. Again, I just don't see the point. For me, I don't see the point. You have a publisher that will give you the time and resources to finish your product. And my only assumption that I can come up with is that they were scared that either the tech wasn't going to do what they wanted it to do, or that they were afraid, because Competizione was so different, is so different from Assetto Corsa 1.0, that they were afraid people weren't going to buy it.
Yep. Yeah, I think they're all valid points. So I think we've kind of covered that in depth. So many angles. Dan, if you're comfortable paying for it early, go ahead and pull the trigger. What you said, he already has it, so he asked that question.
And just to try to round me up.
That's right. Look at that.
Just peeking in your windows.
Digging for the dirt.
I think we had one more thing that we kind of wanted to go into, or I wanted to bring up, and that's that Project Cars 3 was announced. You know, Sean covered that earlier this week. And I know Project Cars got a lot of criticism, especially, you know, when Project Cars 1 came out. It was crowdfunded, like you were referring to, kind of got the ball rolling on that. And as soon as it came out, they pretty much released, you know, or announced that they were working on 2. And the community felt really slighted by the fact that it almost seemed like a money grab, a cash grab to kind of get things going. Project Cars 3 was just announced, and 2 got a lot of grief for the fact that it was so diverse that it didn't really seem to hit 100% on one thing really well. Ian Bell, the head of their studio, has claimed that Project Cars 3, and this is a quote that I got from Team VVV, that he claims that Project Cars 3 will be an ambitious title with the plan to blow anything else planned by anyone else out of the water. Do you guys feel it might be another issue of them possibly overreaching and falling short?
You want to start, Sean?
This is one I'll get myself in trouble on.
I can get in trouble. Not many people watch me.
I'll give you my nutshell. Ian Bell has a past and a reputation in this industry, and it's not 100% innocent in my opinion. He has made some grandiose claims in pre-games coming out. And so, I don't know. I'm not necessarily an Ian Bell believer as much as I am a believer in the team that's truly building Project Cars 2. I don't think Ian Bell's hands-on like he used to be either. But I think Project Cars 2 was such a tremendous leap from Project Cars 1 that they made me pretty happy with what they did on Project Cars 2, despite we could sit here and pick it apart all day long. I think that the time, I think that the rotation of time is adequate, and there's improvements to be made that maybe they shouldn't just hand over for free when you're looking at game development. When you know, we bring up a Battlefield 5, and you know, what do you see between 1, 2, 3, 4, or Madden, you know, 12, 15, 18, or whatever they still do. I think it's certainly a reasonable amount of time. If they're just announcing it now, it's still, you know, probably, you know, well over a year away is my guess. I don't know, but I think it's fair. I think his claims are just another way to upset people and get people angry because now, you know what, am I going to pre-order it because Ian Bell said it's going to make everything else wish they'd never been born? You know, maybe not. But I think that Project Cars 3 could be quite good at the same time. I didn't know until we recently talked about Project Cars 3 that Project Cars Pro was even in existence at all. And Project Cars Pro, if it's parallel to R Factor, there was always R Factor and then there was R Factor Pro that they're building for the race teams. And it was quite a bit different than R Factor.
I think Pro is actually just for car manufacturers.
Just the manufacturers?
Like just displaying like their latest car.
3D modeling.
Yeah, whatever. And then just like, here's the Porsche experience, here's a Porsche.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. So I don't think they're quite, I mean, in one sense, they are the same, but in another respect, they're not.
Sure. It's like a tailored version of Project Cars 2 for a manufacturer.
Yeah, there you go.
To speak.
In fact, I think Kunos did that actually.
Okay.
With some of their stuff, I think.
Okay. And that makes sense. I, for years, have been saying, when are they going to start using what we're doing for exactly that? When you watch TV, half the cars you see in a commercial for a car now are not actually filmed car. It's 3D rendered versions of the car. It blows my mind, but you know they're taken from us. So that's a perfect example. But no, I think there's a lot of room for growth, and I think there's a lot of Project Cars 2 was already quite a while ago in some respects. What was our release date?
Over a year.
Yeah,
it was over a year ago. It was September of last year, I think.
So you think of like a Forza, which was always on a 2-year pattern. Most of our car game guys have gone away from that though. And they're evolving sims of some respect. It's just a matter of what their payment plan is.
Before I get into my thoughts, Amir brings up a good point. KA, they need to focus on building a good racing game and not what is next. And there's two-pronged problem with that. Not saying I disagree with him. I'm stating that the reasons that they don't do that is investors want to know what's next. So they've got to entice investors somehow. Number two, the problem with that is you do make the public feel like they're not focusing on still fixing obvious problems with their version of the game right now. And it always feels, in fact, I think you mentioned it earlier, it always feels half-baked. Like they did Project Cars 1. And while I enjoyed Project Cars 1, there were a lot of problems with that. Mainly, in my opinion, a lot of the tire models for the cars. Project Cars 2 fixed a lot of that. I think that a good portion of the cars drive well. Not all of them, but a good portion of them drive well. I do like the day to night transitions. I love, gimmicky for me, but I really like the different times of year. So they did take a leap forward. Their active track, they called it something I don't remember, Live Track 3.0 or whatever it is. But the problem is it still feels not finished. There's still major AI problems. There's, and if you're going to have AI in your game, you need to do it right. If you don't want to, if you don't want to have AI in there, well then, if you don't want to have AI, then that's a completely different topic. But if you're going to put AI in there, then it needs to be done right. And I don't feel like their AI is as good as it should be. There's just a lot of half-baked ideas in there. And I think the idea with announcing Project Cars 3 is kind of what they did with Project Cars 2 is like, do we put resources into the first game, or do we just cut our losses and take all of our ideas that were half-baked here and put them into Project Cars 2 and do them better, or try to do them better? And I think you're going to get that with whatever this next Project Cars iteration is going to be. You're going to have things that didn't get finished in Project Cars 2 that they're just going to put in Project Cars 3 because for whatever reason they don't feel like fixing the game in Project Cars 2 is worth it. And that comes down to a whole different topic where we get games that are not finished anymore.
Yeah, or never get finished and they move on to the next version. And in the gaming world, I've always found that to be very frustrating.
Well, and unfortunately, you have a system where it is reactionary instead of being proactive. So in other words, a developer, you put out a good example. What was the game? What was the game that I'm trying to think of? It doesn't matter. You put out a game that sells well, your first iteration, and everybody goes, okay, well, this is a promising start. You get number 2, and number 2 sells really well because number 1 was what people thought they were going to get. Yep. But number 2 is terrible.
Yep.
Iteration number 2 sucks. So then iteration number 3 comes along and fixes everything in iteration number 2, and nobody buys iteration number 3 because everybody knew number 2 sucked.
Yep.
And the publisher goes, oh, well, nobody liked what we did in number 3, so I guess we're just going to cut it. Yep. They did that with Dead Space. That's what I was trying to think of. So, well, number 3 wasn't good, but in essence, what they did was they moved the franchise in a direction that wasn't what the audience wanted. And you can't expect, it's just a perpetual cycle. You can't expect the publisher to sit there and go, oh, well, it was actually number 2 that was the problem, not number 3. And you have it's just a whole big issue. And the problem with them announcing games before they complete, and that's essentially what Amir is saying is you're doing yourself a disservice by not finishing off and correcting the problems of the current iteration, because in the long run, the buyer loses faith in the IP.
Yep.
No, I guess my point of contention with that is, or that thought process of, oh, we'll fix it in our next release is, what if you applied that to a different business model and say you bought a brand new car, and it comes and, before you realize it, it's got a crap transmission, or, the thing's prone to blowing up, and, even though you just bought it, 5,000 miles ago, the thing blows up, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to fix that for you, but you just got to buy the same thing over again with the problem fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's in the long term. Gosh, this is a whole topic, and we can cut this off at any time. But the publishers, you can see it right now with Activision and some of these larger publishers. And don't think that smaller sim racing titles don't feel the effect. Is that as a company, they're concerned with continually growing. And it's not enough just to sell, 1 million or 2 copies and get your money back and make some profit. They want all the profit. They want all the money that they can get.
Yep.
So it just limits. It limits. Remember, I don't know if people on here, again, I'm talking things that aren't necessarily sim racing, but Destiny is a good example. Destiny was supposed to be a 10-year-long project, and it ended up being, 2 or 3 years, because they realized that the money wasn't coming in like they wanted to. They couldn't develop fast enough. They couldn't do all these things. So the publisher sits there and goes, hey, cut this. You guys never finished this anyway. The hell with it. We need to start on number 2. And relating to, again, Project Cars, I kind of feel that's the same thought process as you guys have had enough. We're just going to move to the next one. And it creates a problem. It creates bad faith in the IP.
One thing people brought up in this show today was, iRental, but less the iRental spot, but the physical copy of the game, getting a physical copy. And almost all the games that that we compare Project Cars to, it's one of the only ones that's actually still kind of like a $50 buy your game title. Yeah, there's been some DLC for it, but their business model is more, here's the game. Yes, there's DLC add-ons, but versus like a race room needs to come up with new cars, new tracks constantly in order
it's a service. It's a service, not a just standalone title.
Yeah, with a little less monthly involved. But so you kind of like, if we were to go back in time to like NASCAR racing days, how many patches do they owe you before they're entitled to say, hey, that's that, we need to make money as a company as well? And I think that in the case of making it a playable game. You know, Billy brought up AI. AI on a lot of these games we're talking about is a very critical part of making it a game, a quality game. If it's broken, you know, if you can't finish the season in Madden, they can't make the next Madden without finishing things that are integral to the game being played.
Right.
And I think it's a fine line of how much you service your old title versus diverting attention, money, resources to the next title. You know, and getting that right, because like you said, if you ruin your name, you upset your community, you may never recover from such a thing. And on the other hand, if you don't look forward to the future, you might not be around the next generation anyway, you know, depending on your financing.
Yeah, and Brian brings up a good point that, you know, a very recent example is Blizzard Activision with their whole Diablo Immortal, you know, thing. When you really step away from the community and what the core of that is, it just seems like a money grab. You know,
right? Why didn't you put a different name on it? Well, then the publisher will tell you because that the people brand recognize an IP. If you were, for instance, if you were to say Project Cars is no longer Project Cars, assuming that Project Cars, right, exactly. Why did they need to name that Assetto Corsa? How much does it really hold in common with Assetto Corsa? The only big reason to do that is to let you know, because people, you know, unless you're hardcore into it, like, you don't really pay attention to who's making it. I mean, you kind of do, but you kind of don't. So what's more recognizable is the IP. And so they're like, well, we're going to make this new game in partnership with a real racing series. How do we get people to buy it?
Sure.
Well, we're going to have to use the Assetto Corsa name.
Sure.
And instead of, it might have felt different to people, maybe if they used a different name. I don't know. And just let people know that it's the same makers of Assetto Corsa. It's hard to say.
Yeah. No.
But that's the reasoning behind what they do.
Sure. It's almost a must. I mean, be a fool not to. The movie industry does the same thing. It's like, you know, they'll do anything they can to just call it number 2 or number 3 rather than come up with a different name. And when you look at the ones that don't hold the name, they usually don't even do as well, sadly. It's sad to say, because I wish they were a little more original in thinking. But,
well,
you know, it's like it's part of the whole sequel. That's what a sequel is. You know, they're sequels. They're all sequels to an extent.
Yep. It's the same reason that Killison brought back V-Rally. Guys like me, from back in the day, remember fondly memories of V-Rally. And so they used that IP to their advantage instead of calling it something completely different. Like if you look at Milestone and they did Gravel, which Gravel is a much more arcade game than V-Rally is. But how well did Gravel sell? Would it have sold better if they used some other, you know, IP attached to that?
Right. Right. Yep. I was going to say this, but they didn't carry on the name. But in the case of anybody who's an iRacing fan, they know. Anybody who's an iRacing fan, long time, knows that it's Papyrus inside of it. Now, they didn't use the sequel in name, but I mean, even Dave Kemmer will be the first one to tell you that the code is still written on the back of what was NASCAR, GPL, and everything else that Papyrus turning into First Racing would then make, and that's the same. Even if they do change the name, the company's not going to throw out all the work they've done to build the code for, you know, because I don't think anyone's ever thrown anything out. They're just writing and expanding upon what they've been working on for decades. And most of the cases, I mean, you think of Kunos, you think of Assetto Corsa, well, it really dates all the way back to Netcar Pro. So now we're leaving a decade behind, you know, going back to Netcar Pro, and very much of what we play today on Competizione is still at the heart Netcar Pro. Some things they expanded on, some things they, you know, made better, some things they made worse in some case, but yeah, and the same for all of them.
It's a good example of it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of deal.
No,
or why do the same work twice?
Sure.
You know?
Especially when you can keep doing finishing work and expansion work and get such great results with that. You know. Now that would be the day though when somebody, one of the big houses of sim, is like, we threw it all out. This is just from scratch, man. We took that old code and burned it. And this is, we realized in our final calculations that we were never gonna get to a balanced sheet with this. So we threw it all out and we just wrote all new code. So.
Well, I mean, ACC kind of did that with the Unreal Engine.
That is true. That is true. Absolutely. So there you go. It isn't
kind of starts
Netcar
touching
Pro.
on the technology aspect of what we do, where things evolve, you know, to the point to where at some point they're going to have to go, okay, what we had before doesn't work, and if we can get this new thing to work, it will change what we're doing.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
I think that pretty much covers most things. I did have one other topic. You know, unless we get kind of an encore applause from the chat, you think this is probably a good spot to wind this up for a test run?
Being that it's just a test run, I think we definitely should limit it.
Okay.
So did you have one more thought, or are we going to call it right there?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I think we kind of hit all those points, and like I said, I'm good for kind of going off on tangents. So we could obviously talk about a lot of these things ad nauseum.
Sure. Well, and in the future we will. And I think anybody who's tuning in and watching this show, it's like that's what you should be prepared for. Yeah, we're going to start with the news. Yeah, we'll cover some news. We'll cover some esport. But the bottom line is we have lots to talk about. And certain discussions lead to other discussions in some cases. So, and I think that we won't be afraid of taking those roads or avenues towards other topics and turn this into and evolve you guys via Brandon chat or via someday future audio if we can. But absolutely, we're going to continue to take this and have great conversation about things that are impact our sim racing, really. I mean, a lot of cases they impact what we're going to have tomorrow or what we're doing today.
Well, the good news is Brian says he could listen to this all day, so you guys are free to just go to town.
It's very nice you're trying to pump up our egos, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I have to go to the bathroom and eat.
Well, fantastic. Well, we've got Wreckfest in the morning. People can join us for that. We've got the Miatas on Sunday. I actually would try and like to put something together for Race Room this weekend, just a fun race or a practice.
That'd be cool. Billy, you have anything going on with Billy Strange Racing this weekend?
No, not at the moment. I know some of the guys are trying to get me to do another dirt race tonight. I don't know if we're going to do that or not, but okay. So another side note, real quick, on dirt, the day to night stuff. So when you go into the beta UI and you can pick specific time of day, date and all that, versus going through and just selecting like sunset, no time, no date, it's different.
Really?
The traction level's different.
It's not the same?
It's just feels different. We ran a race on Wednesday, and the car just had a lot of tire spin, and the track seemed to dry out much quicker. And I'm like, wow, this is not the same. So I thought I screwed up, and then I went back and did a race at sunset with so basically the same time of day, but I didn't get to pick the date. No 2 times, 4 times, 1 times, just whatever.
Straight up. It's only 1 time, right?
And the car was like hooked up. I'm like, wow, that is really bizarre. So then I went back and I completely redid my setup for the sprint car and got it working on the specific date, because I used a World of Outlaws date. I'm a nerd. So I picked May 19th because that's the race that they actually ran the last calendar year at that track. And then I picked the specific times on their schedule that we would have run. So I had to completely redo the setup. And funny enough, it's more in line with a real setup than doing it the other way.
Did it push back sunset because it was May instead of December?
It will.
So it actually acknowledges seasonal aspect.
The actual, yes. Yep. If you pick like, let's say July, and then you pick December, the sun sets and rises at a different time.
Well, and in May, at noon during the summer, the sun is straight over the track and beating the hell out of it, versus even at noon in December, the sun is at a lower angle and can't heat it even on the warmest of winter days.
Yes, so I'm curious to see what this does to the pro guys on anything, rallycross, oval, road course. It'll be interesting to see what that, if anything, what it does, because I know for sure I didn't feel it as much as Eldora, but I don't know if that's the time of year I picked versus what it said when I was doing my original setups. But definitely at Williams Grove, it's a big change.
This is fascinating.
Yes, it was very, very interesting.
That would be cool to see if we could get somebody on from iRacing that has had their fingers in this aspect of development for that part of the sim, and see how far in depth that goes. Because what if you think about it, if a track's oriented a certain way, I wonder if they took it to the level of, if it's just date specific and the intensity of their source of light, or maybe something like a grandstand's being up, covering half the track.
Yes, it actually does. My understanding is that they actually took the actual weather from that date, and then they took into account on that date, sunrise and sunset, the orientation of the track to the sun. If there's any shade going across the track, which it did at Williams Grove, there was actually shade going across part of the track. It stayed wet longer in those areas.
That's awesome.
Than if the sun was beating down on it and there was no shade.
Wow, these pro guys are probably really gonna have to hire engineers, crew chiefs to
it threw me for a loop. It threw me for a loop because I'm sitting there going, why does it feel so different? Like, it wasn't that it was bad, it just felt different. It was like, wow, this is really bizarre. And I'm like, man, I must have screwed up. So then I went back and checked. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell? This feels great. And then I went and picked the actual specific day and time, and it felt exactly the same as when we ran the race. It felt nothing like when I did the canned states, and I'm like, holy crap, that is crazy. So you're going to have to pay attention. I know we're getting off on iRacing, but you're going to have to pay attention to what they've spec'd out in the season for the series that you're running. So if they've spec'd out, because some of them are still the canned time of day states, and then some of them have the day to night transition in them. And that, when it has the actual, like, they're picking a date or the actual transition, or they've sped up the time, it's definitely going to change the dynamic of how that car is set up.
That is awesome. Yeah, we'll have to, and that's what that lower left is. If we need to put somebody down there from iRacing one day, we will do exactly that. We're prepared for such things in the future. But I think, guys, we all done? I think that's going to take us to the close for this one.
I think so. I think it's been great. I was going to say thank you to both of you for entertaining this idea. I'm really excited about the potential of it. So,
well, it was your persistence who made this happen. We've talked about this for a very long time, but it was the persistence of none other than Brandon Waters, who really is pretty responsible for a lot of this going on. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you all for helping us guinea pig our first show out of the gates.
Yes, thank you.
And forgive some of the clunkiness as we were just trying to work out and test certain things. And we'll have a conversation, and I'm not sure if we're doing another dress or starting next weekend or next week. But we'll be sure to let you guys know. But that is going to do it for this one. Do you guys, any changes, last minute chance for anybody out there? Any thoughts, opinions on what we're doing, how we're doing it, or what we could do different? Be sure to let us know. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
And everybody, get out there, do some racing, have a good weekend. That's going to do it for Getting Billy Strange with Sean Cole, or the Sim Tunnel, or whatever we end up calling it. 7 days to go. 7 days.
7 days to Strange.
So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you, guys. Thank you for helping us troubleshoot the show and get this off the ground and running. That's going to do it.
Thank you, everybody.